All right, good morning, everybody. Let's get started here. All right, grab a seat, get a drink, I'm ready for an exciting day of conservation. In case anybody I've not had a chance to meet yet, my name is Alan Monroe, and I have the honor of being the president and CEO of Living Desert Gardens. I want to welcome you here to our park this morning and for a great day of learning more about conservation. The Living Desert is proud to be able to host this International Desert Conservation Summit. It actually warms my heart to see so many people here in the room. This is the third year we've done this. The last 2 years were virtual. Virtual's good when it's the only choice you have, but it's much better to see smiling faces and be able to ask questions and talk to people and have that in-person engagement. That's who I am. I want to recognize Susan Cooper is one of our sponsors for this event. She's also a volunteer at Living Desert, so we appreciate her effort. And then also visit Greater Palm Springs, which are a local convention of visiting Southwest. Living Desert is this great venue to tell the story about deserts of the world. Unlike many organizations that try and do a postage stamp kind of approach, we have a narrow message we tell. We just tell it very deeply, all about deserts. We have deserts here in obviously the southwestern portion of the United States. We talk about the deserts in Africa. And our newest effort is the deserts of Mongolia, the Gobi Desert. So we'll have a chance to learn more about our efforts there. We've got this great botanical garden that we have that's associated with us. You have a chance to walk through the park, see the plants that are associated with different desert habitats. And of course, we have our amazing animals that are ambassadors for their species. And we tell their conservation stories. In this case, the Mexican wolf, a critically endangered subspecies of the wolf here in North America, down to only 7 animals back in the late 60s and early 70s, this close to extinction. And because of the efforts of zoos and our federal and state partners, including Living Desert, we were able to pull them back from the brink of extinction. There are now, I think, almost 500 Mexican wolves in the world. It's still a very small number, but I believe there are 2 or 3 populations where they've been reintroduced back into the wild in Arizona and New Mexico, where they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're restoring the balanced ecosystem. They're chasing down sick or injured mule deer. They're thinning down the rabbit population. That's what it's all about. So we're super excited about these kind of efforts that result from our efforts. And then, of course, the second thing we're about is engaging with the public. People nowadays, they live, especially young people, live their life on their digital devices. And no matter how good the high def is, it's not the same as seeing animals in person. And so they'll have people, young people of all ages come to our park. And for many of them, this is the first time they've had a chance to see wild animals. So that starts the journey of knowledge and empathy and exploration. And that then builds, hopefully they will grow up having more information, make better decisions about the use of natural resources, the protection of spaces, and the plants and animals that call them home. In this case, those little girls engaged with Cordelia, our southern bound hornbill, one of our great ambassador animals. And we have education programs that run the gamut from toddlers all the way up to senior citizens. And so we have programs that go to retirement homes here in the community and still share the message. We think you're never too old to learn something new, and you're never too young either. So this is our Me and You at the Zoo program. I really like this because when the kids get a chance to dig in the dirt anymore. And so we would grow bean sprouts. So in a week you can get a bean sprout up a foot high. We give it to the kids, and they go out there and they dig a little hole, and mom or dad help them do that. They plant the seed, and they go back inside, and they continue on the program. Then the squirrels come down and eat the bean sprouts. And so next week we got a fresh new plot. New bean sprouts. And so this is a great ecosystem. You teach little kids, the squirrels hit the tree, and it all works out well. We educate about 100,000 school-aged kids a year to come to our facility. And we did a heat map analysis. We're surprised at how far they were coming to come to our facility. So these are school field trips. So there are teachers as far away as Calexico, down the Mexican border, or as far west as Long Beach. And they're carrying their kids on a van or a bus and driving them for 2 or 3 or maybe 4 hours, depending on the traffic, to come to our facility. And that tells us that we are offering an educational experiences of value to our students. The second thing we're passionate about is our conservation programs. And so unless you're really a living desert aficionado, you may not be aware of the extent of the conservation programs that we support, sponsor, and improve. About half of our programs are here in the desert Southwest. And the others are scattered through the desert habitats in Africa, a little bit in India, and as I mentioned, our newest one in Mongolia. And so you have a chance today to learn more about these efforts as we're going to go. One of our programs that we're doing is Let's Talk Trash. Animal conservation is not an animal problem, it's a people problem. The animals know what to do. We just need to make sure that we aren't interfering with them. And trash is one of the key factors about this. The raven population is like, 1,000% higher than the baseline norm. Because of that trash, that the ravens, they feed off our refuse. And the French fries in the parking lot and the back of the McDonald's and such, raven populations have gone up. And ravens, like little baby tortoises, are like jelly-filled donuts for them. And it's bad for the tortoises, and so the numbers are down. And so we work with the local restaurants to just tell them to just cover your trash cans. We'll help bring down the food resource, which will bring down the raven population, which will make the tortoises more successful. The other thing we're doing is a Head Start program. And so the tortoises are vulnerable when they're the smallest size, when they just hatch out of the egg. For the first year or 2 of their life, their shells are too thin, and the ravens can poke right through that. So we're doing an experimental program where we take the tortoise eggs and we incubate them, hatch them. The tortoises get out, we then grow them up to a larger size, a thicker shell, in a faster way, and then we put them back out into the wild where they escape that critical period of their production. And there's nothing you need to watch out more than a feeding frenzy of baby tortoise. As soon as you put that piece of lettuce in there, you've never seen tortoises move so fast. They have a good time. And so we're doing this as part of our education programs, our research. This is on display for our guests in our hospital. And so they get a chance to learn more about all the things that it takes to manage this kind of conservation. And so with that, I want to invite up Dr. James Nanoff-Berg. He's our Vice President of Conservation. He's going to tell you a little bit more about today's activities and all the wonderful things you're going to do. So give it up for Dr. Nanoff-Berg.
We have a full day today with many wonderful things. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for being our supporters. Thank you for being fans of the desert and for its conservation. We have many things happening this fine day. We had this morning 4 panels that we're going to be working through. Right? We're going to be enjoying, benefiting from the insights and innovations and ideas of our speakers. The schedule is all, of course, in our handbook, and everyone has one of these. No, they're outside. You can pick up one of these as well after we take a break. We're going to be having 3 presenters in each of our 4 sessions. And there will be 2 conservation heroes in each of our sessions, and then also a TLD staff that's going to talk about the kinds of conservation projects that we do that echo, enlarge on, and make sort of bring it home to us here in the Coachella Valley. Right? The things that we're doing at the Living Desert that benefits the world and that we support our conservation heroes with. The way that our panel discussions will be happening is that we will have short presentations, about 5 minutes from each of our speakers. They'll talk a little bit about their work, their projects, the things that they're doing, the things that they're making a difference in the world for, and then we'll have an open discussion. I have a bunch of questions that I have written out myself, and we also have a few things opportunities for you to be able to submit questions to us, and we will work as many of those in as we can. To do that, we have that's me. We have a barcode, a QR code rather. And so if you could take out your phones, this is the same QR code, the same system that we will use. So if you could scan this QR code, we will use that as a way for you to be able to submit questions to us after the panels and even while the panels are going on. So it's not rude in this situation. Once you have silenced your cell phones, to be able to be typing on your phone and asking questions. Right? So each of our presenters will give a 5-minute presentation. We'll have a bit of a discussion talk, right? And the way to do those questions is through this code. So our first question is this one as a test. And also because it's useful for us to be able to better understand what folks are thinking. What do you hope to learn today from our speakers, from our presentation? What do you hope to learn today? Scan that code. And type in something you would like to learn today. This is as much useful information for us as it is a way to make certain that you have the opportunity to be able to submit questions. If you have a QR code reader, that's a great way to go. Most phones now have the ability to just, when you go into camera mode, to scan the image and it'll automatically say, go to this site, and you say yes. Anybody okay with that? Anybody get a hand?
I'm in a digital detox, so I don't have to.
Digital detox, okay. Maybe talk to a neighbor. Ask them to submit a question for you. I love the term and the idea of a digital detox. All right. So what do you hope to learn today? We're going to be talking about some of the 80 conservation projects that we do here through the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens in 12 countries on 3 continents. And these projects will, of course, go and support those of our desert conservation heroes today as well. Has everybody successfully submitted something that is interested in submitting things successfully? Okay, good. All right, our second question for you. Deserts cover about 1/3 of the world. Desert and desert adjacent ecosystems, savannas, grasslands, those kinds of things. So why does desert conservation matter to you? Why does desert conservation matter to you as an individual? Is this stuff important? We all have our reasons. Helps get at why we're here. Motivators are that made you click that button to submit a ticket. To our sold out event, our first ever in-person sold out event. We're so grateful for that. My goodness, that's a great statement of support. We're really grateful that you all are here. Why does desert conservation matter to you? Speaking for myself, I've devoted my life to desert conservation. Deserts for me are a religious experience. I think there's no coincidence that all the world's monotheistic religions and a few of the polytheistic religions have come out of deserts. Something humbling about deserts. It puts us in our place. Right? Okay, has everybody done that wants to? Anybody need more time? Yeah. A couple more seconds, okay. Very good. So as I said, this is the same code and the same page. So don't close the app. Leave it open on your phone. If there are questions that come up that you would like to ask, you can go into the thing and spontaneously ask the questions. They will be up. our technical support staff, Katie. Also, I want to call out two people again, as I did last night on our video shorts time, the two people who have made this event possible. Alan had the idea for the event. I fleshed out the event. Our rest of our directors team and our support staff and leading folks have helped to flesh this team out. But the reasons why things are running well, why you have a chair to sit on, is in no small part thanks to Rebecca Ruffing and Katie Shaw. You can give a hand for both of them. And also, before we get going on it, I want to thank Frank from IT, who did a great overhead possible as well. And of course, our amazing facilities and grounds crew who have set up everything and made the transition from, this room was full of round tables and dinner and food and tables outside, and everything was turned over in like an hour after we were done last night. So a hand for our facilities and grounds crew. As well as our food and beverage people who are feeding us today. So thank them too. So these things come about because of our people. We're very grateful to have some really wonderful people working with you. Okay, so I think we're right. Our first panel is all about conserving Southern California and Baja California deserts, what I'm going to call the California deserts. This single desert, a series of deserts, are connected and separated by a border. And that border is very porous for animals, for plants, cultures, right? We are two countries in one desert that share a culture, share an ecosystem, and share an entire biodiversity. So we're going to hear a bunch of great stories about conserving Southern California and Baja, or California deserts, from Death Valley down to the tip of Baja, and over to Sonora, down there, mainland Mexico, as they say. So our first up is Enrique Sanuro. We've been working with Enrique Sanuro from Pesca ABC for a very long time. And Pesca ABC is a group of fishers that Enrique will talk a little bit about, tell you a little bit about the amazing things that this visionary group of fishers have done to help create sustainable fisheries that benefit all of the animals in the upper Gulf of California, but in particular the vaquita, which I have tattooed on my left leg. We're the most endangered marine mammal in the world, and one of the most endangered mammals of any kind in the world. And so Enrique and his crew of desert conservation bureaus as well, the fishermen of the upper Gulf of California. Enrique.
It works. Yeah, so let me. So we are in this place where the desert meets the sea. So it's people living in the desert but fishing. And it's in the Sea of Cortez, just a few hours driving from here. So this organization, what I like most, it's not conservationists going and tell people, let's do things. It's the opposite. It's a group of fishermen that they understand that things were not working that well as they were. And they build this organization. And they envision one single thing. One upper Gulf of California, where they could make a living, they could continue fishing, but they could preserve this area. And they know they don't have all the information, but they are also aware that probably scientists don't know all the information. So the way they think it's the best way for working, it's trying to make this circle where scientists took information from fishers and fishers give information to scientists and make these scientists to fishers and fishers to scientists, make it around all the time. So that's the way it works. So they built this organization, and the board of directors, the board of directors, it's only 5, but there are a lot of fishers working there. It's all the fishers. My boss, my board of directors, the bosses are directors. Then we have an executive director, so I'm their employee, they call me, say, okay, we need a director to build these things. And we also have an advisory board that we decide together that it's mainly made by other NGOs that could help us to move and make this business work, and a surveillance council it's two people from other organizations that make us being all time accountable, because we think being accountable is super important for nonprofits. So we are at this moment, so this organization was created in 2015, and since then they have been doing only three things. So we have been. It's the most important, it's alternative ways of fishing. So Pesca ABC, it stands for Alternativa de Baja, Alternative Fishing of Baja California. So that's the acronym ABC, and that's the origin of the organization. So the main threat to Vaquita, to this purpose that it's critically endangered, the most critically endangered marine mammal in the world, it's only drift gillnets, the only threat to that. So if we're able to fish differently, then we can save Vaquita. So alternative ways of fishing, it's the core of the organization. However, also other important things, it's community science. We have to monitor where the Vaquita is, we have to monitor other animals, so we can design probably putting in some no-take zones, and now it's working better, having these no-take zones in the places where we have more density of Vaquita, but also close gear. There is a lot of abandoned and derelict fishing gear that is also a threat. So taking that gear out and making that work is also super important, and now we're putting a lot of emphasis on that. We have our values, I can see. Of course, one of our most important values is innovation. We have to innovate an alternative here. And that's the origin of the organization. That's one of our more important values. Collaboration. We're still a very small organization, so working with other organizations, with other people, sometimes with government, and it's not our favorite, but sometimes with them, it will make us bigger. Inspiration. So we cannot convince people, but we can start making things differently, so we inspire people. Convincing is difficult, inspiring is probably easier. So we want to inspire, give inspiration to the rest of the community. And reciprocity, we have to understand that human-wildlife conflicts are reciprocal problems, that there's always a trade-off. So understanding reciprocity in a human-wildlife conflict will help us to have a reasonable solution. And that's what we are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique. It's really an amazing opportunity, amazing group of fishers, led by a really inspirational guy. Next up, we're going to talk about the California state reptile, the desert tortoise, the ravenous little babies that we have down at the veterinary hospital that you can come down and see as we do our Head Start program. Tim Shields of Hard Shell Labs has been working in this field for many years and has changed his focus more recently to being very technologically focused, innovative. So we're going to hear a bit of innovation. Come on.
Thanks. First off, the idea of a hero is a little bit silly. The lone hero is a bit silly. I agree that identifying individuals as people to laud is a default setting of humans, but I work with dozens, hundreds of people really, and I'm sure all of our heroes have communities of hundreds of people supporting the work they do. So I'll take being labeled a hero, but it's, I don't take it too seriously. I went out to the desert in 1978 and started studying desert tortoises. I spent 35 years doing it. And in the course of that period of time, I fell madly in love with these creatures. It's my favorite creature on the earth. All of these other heroes have their favorites as well. And in the course of that work, which was tracking population dynamics of the species, I've witnessed a 95% decline in the numbers. And that is also a very common theme. It's like 90 to 95%. All of our conservation heroes are seeing that, the vaquita, cheetahs, lions. So what do we do with the remainder? You can be depressed about a loss of 90%, or you can be reassured and inspired by the continued survival of these creatures. And I think hope is a really important factor. So 10 years ago, I went from being an observer to a participant in the conservation story. I had spent 35 years watching the situation. I identified ravens as the manageable problem. And then I just started looking for gizmos, because what we had was inadequate. Simply conserving land was inadequate to address the problem. And I found lasers. Ravens are almost mystically sensitive to lasers. And I found drones, and we're doing birth control. Actually, how do I get the next slide? It's just a bunch of pictures of gizmos. Right arrow? Where's right arrow? Thank you. That's Archer Labs. That's a pitch deck element. Here's what I want to show. So upper left, laser shot amongst a group of ravens. The ravens are circled in red. They're fleeing. The egg oiling drone, upper right, is a very weird device that if you get a little bit of oil on a bird's egg, it doesn't hatch. But it doesn't, oiling the eggs doesn't damage the eggs. The adults keep taking care of them. You've tied up their reproductive effort. They end up with no babies out of a season of effort, which is, we're having startling success bringing raven numbers down in areas where we're doing intensive egg oiling. This little guy is a fake tortoise. We've worked an inordinate amount of time to imitate a real tortoise in 3D printing. And what you can do with a fake tortoise is pretty remarkable. And one of them is, the lower picture is a chemical called methylenthranolate. That sounds scary, but it's artificial grape flavoring, is a specific bird repellent. I knew none of this 10 years ago. I'm just like, it's remarkable when you start looking for a tool, what is possible. And the secret to what we're doing, so that methylenthranolate is a very surprising treatment for that raven that came down thinking it was going to have breakfast. So the formula is go talk to engineers, because they know all of these tools that you don't know, because you're just a dirtbag biologist. And it has been remarkable tapping into the community of engineers, because they're doing, like I work with this guy, he figured out a radar system landing, a parachute system for a radar landed on Mars. So this guy on Earth figured out what would be required to land a radar system on Mars. They did it successfully, but he grew up with 2 desert tortoises in his backyard. He was madly in love with desert tortoises, and all I had to say was, oh, we could use some engineering for desert tortoise conservation, and he was lit up, and it's a juicy problem. So I'm already talking to the African people about lions and cheetahs and how to reduce conflict. So there's hope. There are a lot of tools coming up. I used to be a Luddite, and now I'm an eco-technologist. So there you go.
Thank you, Tim. So the journey from Luddite to eco-technologist is pretty dramatic. As is the journey for many of us as biologists and conservationists, from working with biology as a major driver of our energies to realizing that we need to work with people. So there are a lot of transition states that happen across the landscapes here with our communities, especially once you get into conservation with those communities. So next up, the third person from our panel here, third and final person from our panel is TLD Steph. She is a curator of our animal care team, and she's been working with pronghorn conservation since 2005? 6, quite a long time. And this is Wendy Enright. Please come on. Wendy will be the only presenter, I think, today who is from the Coachella Valley. Born and raised here in the Coachella Valley.
How do I get to next slide? Right here? There we go. I got it. Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce you to our working relationship with the Peninsular Pronghorn Recovery Project in Baja, California, which, like Dr. James said, I've been involved in since 2006. Living Desert's involvement in the project started around 2004. So the recovery project actually started in 1997, and it was established by the Mexican government in cooperation with Espacios Naturales. And then very close after that, the first management facility was built within the El Vizcaíno Desert. In 2000, Los Angeles jumped onto assisting with the program and aiding in the husbandry and management. And at this time, there were less than 13 animals down there in their breeding program, and less than 250 estimated in the wild population. Some numbers may be even less than that. In 2004, the Living Desert sponsored an educational poster for, I don't have a picture of that poster, it's too long ago, I couldn't find it, for the schools surrounding the Vizcaíno Desert to teach the local children about the pronghorn. And actually in 2006, when I was there, we were able to go around to some of the schools and meet with the kids and talk with them about saving the pronghorn that lives in their backyard. So between 2005 and 2024, Living Desert has continued to provide support in a variety of ways. In the early years, we were doing a lot of hand-rearing of fawns. It's a very old picture of me the first time I was down there. Hand-rearing one of the fawns. One of those 4 of those fawns actually were the first 4. It was 2 males and 2 females that were imported up into the United States to develop our breeding program, which is now about 35 animals in 6 different zoos across the U.S., the southwestern U.S. We also assisted down there with doing relocations from their semi-captive managed herds to move them to more open areas. And in 2020, we were down there with Dr. James and a few other people from a couple other institutions. We worked with the staff down there to develop a species action plan, which contributed to them being added as their own subspecies to the IUCN Red List. That's the info I have.
So also, before we get together, we're talking about conserving the California deserts. And we want to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the historical Kikuyu and Chemehuevi people, and we'd like to acknowledge and thank the ancestors who have lived and continue to live and thrive in the Coachella Valley, retaining their rights to lands across the valley to this day. We express our gratitude to their historical and ongoing skillful land management that benefits the animals, plants, and people. We commit to continue our own ongoing efforts to collaborate with and support their efforts here through the Living Desert Community Gardens and through our many partnerships. So, really wonderful groups of folks that we collaborate with quite a lot, and we feel really lucky to be able to collaborate with the Kikuyu and Chemehuevi in our valley. In any case, so our first panel, if we could ask all 3 speakers to come up and take those seats. We'll we'll have the panel questions here. Well, if Tim's gonna have props, I'm gonna bring props for everybody here. I have a little pronghorn for Wendy. I have a fishing hat. I don't have a pescadores hat, Enrique. I need to get one of those. That's right, 3D print the hat, that's good. All right, so what do you think? We've talked about the vaquita and all the marine animals that are in the upper Gulf of California. We've talked about desert tortoises, we've talked about pronghorn. The major threats that each of you talked about are quite different from each other, right? Fishing, ravens, and hunting with the pronghorn. So what do you think are the main things that, I want to focus on government so much, I want to focus on things that we can do as individuals. What are the sort of the main things that your work could help further the conservation of these species and be supported by us, by the public? We only have one mic, so we're gonna have to pass this around.
I think that in human-wildlife conflicts, there is kind of one single thing to, mostly people don't want to harm wildlife. They want to do their living, but while doing their living, they harm wildlife in some situations, like probably with the garbage, or the case with consuming seafood, or probably hunting or maintaining their ranches near the animal. So people not necessarily want to harm wildlife, and we have to create this set of incentives in some way to make people that are aware that their decisions are affected. So in the case of us, it's probably seafood consumption. You go out there and buy some blue shrimp from Mexico without knowing that blue shrimp from Mexico was necessarily catch my gillnets. There's no way you can take it by other way of fishing. So just going to the market and avoiding that consumption and asking to your waiter where these fish come from and learning a little bit more about seafood will help a lot. And I'm sure that will happen competitive with combat or with ranch raising or cattle raising, whatever. I think there's a way consumers can help make this change for us.
For supporting Peninsula Pronghorn, I think that supporting the living desert coming here to visit is a great way to help support almost all conservation programs, because part of our funds go to supporting those. And then if you were ever down in the beautiful area of California, Baja, California, then I would suggest going to visit the visitor center in Guerrero Negro for the Peninsula Pronghorn. They have a beautiful visitor center there that teaches you all about why you want to save the Peninsula Pronghorn.
The almost absurd number of ravens. For the thing, screaming, it's just feedback. The almost absurd number of ravens that coexist with human beings are a direct result of human behavior. My approach with that particular problem, that's one of many problems facing the desert tortoise, is basically with these gizmos I'm talking about, to buy time for the species, for human behavior to change. Like, this is, I feel like kind of a first responder. I'm on the scene of the accident, stabilize the patient, keep the patient alive long enough for the systemic changes that need to happen. So a project I'm working on right now with a great land conservancy called Transition Habitat Conservancy is we're applying all of these raven management tools whole bunch of habitat enhancements for tortoises. And for the first time, we're kind of seeing how all of these gizmos can work together. But I think ultimately it's raising human consciousness. And something I'm very excited about is we work on internet-connected devices. So we're a screen-based culture. Like everybody's looking at their screens all the time. My thinking is, how do we put planet Earth on those screens? Because we're going around, we're living on this planet of miracles, and we're staring at screens. And it's right out there. And all we need to do is put that planet, like the desert tortoise is an incredibly charismatic animal. It's its own best ambassador. I kind of look at my thing as just like my real goal is to get them on the screens. So people will fall in love with them as soon as they're on the screen. So that's a longer term, but not very far away. We're very close to having a series of online games that are actually conservation actions.
No, okay.
Rather just shout.
Kim gives off such technological innovation that overwhelms the microphone. Clearly. All right, so great responses. You know, it seems like, to summarize if I could, a lot of the things that we could do as conservationists is empower people by helping them understand better their choices, the consequence of their choices, their actions, and how they could help support these processes directly, be a part of it, right? So along those lines, Enrique, for you in the upper Gulf of California, as you were saying, the sea turtles and other things that are being caught incidentally in the nets, they're not intentionally caught, right? It's not an action that they want to do. It's actually a hindrance, it's a problem for them, right? And so a lot of the challenges that you face with Pesca, say, are the alternative fishing methods that you were talking about a little bit today, but a lot more at the video last night. But are there other alternatives that the fishers could use that they're interested in to supplement their income? And would they be interested in those alternative livelihoods as a way to supplement their income, to diversify who they are, what their income stream is?
So this is specifically for the case of the upper Gulf. So the fishing seasons are very marked. So there's no way you can find one fisher that it's only a shrimp fisher or a fetish fisher or only do ecotourism. They like to do a lot of things because of the season. So they usually can do from September to March, they go for shrimp, but then from March to July, they go for finfish, and then summer they do some tourism things. So they like doing several things. So understanding the portfolio of ways of working can help you to make arrangements for the portfolio in which you can use less of your time in shrimp and more time in other things. So we are at this moment noticing that finfish could be caught very nicely with just hook and line. The thing is they will obtain like 30 or 40% less catches. So we have to compensate by price. So what we are doing now is changing the technique of slaughtering the fish. If you bring the fish alive and slaughter the fish in the boat in a humanitarian way, then the fish will have less toxins and less blood and bacteria, and the shelf time can increase 3 times, from 10 days to almost 30 days. We will have fresh fish with good management. And the packers and processors will pay for that shelf time. So then you will compensate. So you have to understand, like, going deeply and understand the portfolio of actions and try to make the non-gilded things more profitable.
Yeah, so to summarize then, sort of, they're already doing a diversity of incomes. It's not just that, but also improving the value per unit effort, right? By appropriate ways of terminating the life of the fish so that they will be able to have a longer life on the shelf. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, and probably also if there were ways to certify that they were caught in ways that were safe for Vaquita, sort of a Vaquita safe fishing thing, similar to tuna safe certification. All right, thank you. All right, Tim, a question for you. Much of your work is, of course, focused recently on the novel applications of technologies to historically challenging problems. Once you perfect those approaches and demonstrate that they have massive impacts on beneficial impacts on the challenges that you're trying to face, are there ways that the public could help you scale these up? Like maybe with the techno approach, for example.
That's sort of the holy grail of the situation, is how do you configure these things such that more human beings can be involved. So I'll expand a little bit on the game idea. We are currently using an internet-connected laser to repel ravens from major subsidy sites. It's very successful because they are so sensitive to lasers. But the problem you face is the labor intensity. If you're there, a single human being with a laser on one site, that's relatively labor intensive. But if you have this internet connection, a single operator can monitor multiple sites. But then the next step is, why do you have to do the work when it's a hell of a lot of fun to zap ravens with lasers? It doesn't hurt them, and it is wildly entertaining. I've done it for 10 years of my life. I am certain I'm the human being that has shot more ravens than anyone else with lasers, and it's a first-person shooter game. It's just sitting there, and we're very close to, like, I don't know if it will be commercializing it, but that's the way you get massive engagement, and also you're putting the problem in the form of a game in front of the people whose participation brings the cost down of the activity. And so it's a wild idea, and I'm obsessed with it.
That's awesome. Novel uses of gamification. All right. Wendy, a question for you. And thanks everybody for these wonderful questions. There's 21 questions in here. There's no way we're going to get to them all in 12 minutes, but we'll do our best. Could you talk about the ongoing pronghorn hand rearing efforts today in Baja? What's the status of the program? How are things going right now?
Well, since 2020, when COVID hit, and a slowdown of doing hand rearing and being able to get the paperwork completed to do imports, because the reason we do the hand rearing down there is to be able to import them up to California. They usually end up going to either LA Zoo or quarantines, and hand rearing them makes them much calmer for the transport up that long drive or flight up here. So since we did the species action plan in February of 2020, we missed the shutdown of everything by just a couple of weeks. So there's been a couple efforts to start the hand rearing back up again. I believe we're gonna try again for this coming season possibly, but I haven't heard any definite if we're a go or not. So, but I've been down there over the years. I've gone down 4 times, I believe, to do groups of hand rearing over the years.
Thank you. Tim, we have a couple questions from the audience about ravens and crows. There were several of the questions are there any discussions of culling raven populations? And another person has suggested that, of course, wildlife laws generally disallow harassment, especially for migratory birds by the Migratory Bird Act. And how can that be balanced and effective?
Actually, bird hazing is, there's a blanket approval of that by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So the hazing we do is it's not prohibited at all by regulation. And this was an acknowledgement in the formation of the Migratory Bird Act that birds cause problems. When we concentrate resources, birds respond and they cause problems. So there isn't a regulatory prohibition for what we're doing on that score. What was the first part of the question? Okay, there is a program in an entity called Wildlife Services for culling ravens. It's permitted, and it's conservation based. It's also resource protection based. And I've talked to a bunch of these guys, and they go out and they shoot ravens. And what we do is we target. So we go along power lines and we find occasionally piles of dead baby tortoises beneath the nests that have been killed by the ravens that are attempting to feed their clutches of young. They're just doing what ravens do, but there are certain specialists that get taken out of the population. The problem is ravens are really smart, and they recognize the truck and they recognize the individuals, and you can't get close to them. And if you only get one of the pair, the survivor teaches everybody else in the guy, watch out for that guy. I actually have a version of that when I go to some of these subsidy sites, my car, if I get out of my car, I've had 700 ravens just up and fly away because the bad man has come and gotten out of his car. The point is, these things are super intelligent and they're social. Killing them is really labor intensive, but teaching them is not. And so the way I look at it is we're inserting memes into their social media, and we can, I'm now a meme, I'm the bad man. And when I get out of my car, everybody knows how to respond and they split. So that's what we should use. And that's a nonviolent solution to gradually addressing the problem. Shooting them is just, culling them is really hard, and the alternative is poisoning them. There is a poison called DRC 1339. It's being used. It's problematic. I think there's better ways, and ways that don't evoke opposition from people who care about wildlife and care about ravens. I love ravens. They're super cool, so interesting. And so let's figure out how to move toward a solution that is smooth and just and ethical for everybody involved.
Well put. Ravens, for anyone who's ever worked with them or if you've ever watched ravens, they're amazing birds. They're super smart, they're charismatic, they have individual personalities. They all dislike my standard poodle for some reason. He doesn't like them either, so it's a mutual detestation. So we had a really good question about hope in the conservation programs. Practice hope in the work that you do. Enrique, I'd like to maybe ask you to start that question, because so much of what you're doing is trying to work with the innovators, right? The people who see the hope, that see the future, that see that possibility, and get them to popularize the approaches to many other people. How do you practice hope and instill hope in the populations?
So I will tell a personal story. When I was invited to be the executive director of KBC 3 years ago, so Fisher called me and said, Enrique, you want to be the executive director? I said, I don't know. The reason I don't know, it's probably not. I'm not sure we can say Paquita. 10, 12 Paquitas, 15 Paquitas, I don't know if I want to be the rest of my life saying something that we cannot say. I have some sleepless nights thinking about it. And I still don't have an answer if we can say that. But I have one answer that made me accept this position, and it's the only way we can say that is working with people, working with an initiative that was born in that community and group of people. So I don't know if we can say it, but I do know that the only ones that could make it is us. So that gives me hope that something could happen that will be good. And I don't know what will happen with Vaquita, but I know what's happening with the community, with the people. And more people is understanding conservation, more people is understanding the importance of the ecosystem and the importance of sustainable fishing, and that gives me some hope about the future.
So that made me think also of a personal story of the first year that I was able to go down to the Pronghorn project. We were down there for close to 4 weeks, which is a long time to be there. In those days, we were basically in the middle of the desert in a tent. And this was the first attempt to do hand rearing and bring and import the original 4 fawns. And I think we had a group of about 10 fawns. And when we got down there was a little fawn that was only a couple days old, and she was being very stubborn about going on the bottle. She did not want it to have anything to do with taking this bottle from anybody. So I took her, and the other staff that were down there were feeding the others, and I worked with her 5 times a day, and every day, and I believe it was the day before we left, so it was like day 26 is when it finally clicked in her head and she took the bottle on her own. And then she was actually one of the 4 that was picked to come up into LA Zoo to be the original group of 4, and eventually had her own offspring, and her genes are now running through the entire zoo population in the 6 institutions. And for me, that's why I feel really strongly, one of the things that makes me feel really strongly about continuing to be part of the program, and just knowing that like all that hard work, not giving up on her, she was part of bringing the numbers up for the zoo population, and people being able to come and see her and her children throughout the years has been great, and I hope people enjoy being able to see them because they're a really great species.
Hopelessness is really boring. It's safe. You're not risking anything, but you're also not getting anything. And so it's a self-defense mechanism, I understand that, but I'm sort of pathologically optimistic, and I just figure it's more fun trying stuff out and trying to solve a problem than bemoaning the problem. Like, so here's my personal story. For years, I would go up to cohorts in the tortoise conservation realm, and I'd say, man, we gotta do something about the ravens. And I would get this, like, oh, they're so smart. Like, there's nothing we can do, like surrendering before the battle is joined. And I just thought, man, it's more interesting to try something out. And it has been a remarkably hope-engendering process just to learn how many tools there are. So now we're approaching another problem and facing the desert ecosystem, which is a little Mediterranean grass called schismus. It's this little golden grass, and it's everywhere. And there are vast areas in the Mojave now that are nothing but schismus. It's wiping out. It's out-competing all the native annuals, and we got to get on this one. But I'm looking at schismus now that I've done this thing with ravens and had some success. I'm looking at schismus and going, we're coming for you.
Well, you can't end a discussion better than talking about the hope, right? There is clearly hope, And there were a bunch of questions about the different animals' population sizes. If I could just, in a quick thing, kind of summarize, work with all of you. So for Vaquita, Vaquita has been around a dozen or fewer individuals, between say 8 and 10, for the last 4 years, which to me is inspiring hope, because not only is the population size staying stable, very small, but still every year there has been at least a few calves being born that they have cited. Right? So vaquita are stable, they're hopefully going to increase, they certainly can continue to breed. And the great work that Pesca Agassi has been doing has really been inspiring things for me. It's similar to how Tim's discussion of hope, all these new tools, all this innovation, so many people passionate about the project. And then with the Pronghorn, with the Peninsula Pronghorn, we went from around 250 or so, and now I think we're over 400, almost 500, thanks to the work of Victor Sanchez and his family, just this amazing group of folks who single-handedly, this one family has kept this subspecies alive with our support, but mostly it has been them. So people, animals, technology, that for me brings hope. If you could join me in thanking our 3 panelists here. So we'll transition over to our next panel. So while all the things reset. So our next panel, we're moving from our homeland here to our newest homeland for the living desert in the center of Asia, into Mongolia, high altitude deserts that are dramatically similar to ours in topography, in terrain. The first time I went to Mongolia working with the first of our speakers, which is Ghana Wingard, who will be talking here in just a moment, I would go to a place and I'd say, that looks like big rocks at Joshua Tree. Oh, that is just like Hellhole Canyon in Anza Borrego. You know, oh, this looks like Coachella, for gosh sakes. You know, it's just like my second home is Mongolia. So it's very much similar to the places that we live here. It's quite different temperature-wise. It's quite cold, quite high, and therefore functions very differently. And of course, culturally, it's quite different as well. A third of the population of Mongolia remain traditional herders, nomadic traditional herders. They move their flock, their herds, their flocks to places where the food is abundant. So they're moving across the landscape. And since the collapse of the Soviet Union and its relationship with Mongolia, the transition from sort of a state-sponsored communism kind of thing to a free market economy has led to dramatic increases in those flocks, which are having a disproportionate impact on the landscape. Along those lines, too, the free market system has been bringing in mining and dramatic changes to the landscape. So those two challenges are two of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now in Mongolia. And they'll be the focus of this next section, which is conserving high elevation deserts in Mongolia. I could invite up first Ghana Wingard, who is our curator of conservation for Mongolia and has been leading this program, the Mongolian Conservation Initiative, for over 20, let's just say many years. She is very youthful and tremendously accomplished. Ghana.
All right, Mongolia. So, I went to graduate school in Missoula, Montana, and there was one Christmas, and there was a small post office, and they said, we ship everywhere, including Outer Mongolia. That's what I think the people understand. Mongolia is far, and it's unknown, and but still it's a very beautiful country. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for James for the nice introduction. And yeah, so I can talk for days because it's 25 years of project. And the project was successful because we partnered with hundreds and hundreds of people. And there were local partners, we partnered with international partners, they funded us, and local communities, and local herders, local teachers, and rangers. So our success story is in a partnership. So in my logo, there is Ignat Nature Reserve, Ignat means big sunny rocks nature reserve. So because we are based in Gobi Desert in Mongolia, it's one of the coldest deserts in Asia, and also it's one of the largest deserts in Asia as well. So we've been working with scientists from all around the world for the last 20 years, and we published over 150 peer-reviewed publications, and we share those knowledges. So basically we do science-based conservation and also community engaged and community-led conservations with partners. We're happy to announce that our United in Conservation new logo, and we're very happy to partner with the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens because we both work in a very unique two deserts of the world. Like James said, one cold, the temperature is high as 115 degrees in some Fahrenheit, but winter it's minus 40. So the animals must fit with these extreme changes, and the system is a little different than here. So the nature reserve is protected by the Mongolian government. However, it's a different, like Joshua Tree, because in the nature reserve, people live there. They have their own livestock, they have their winter spot, their spring spot, and they move around for the food. So it means we have to protect those globally declining species. Also, we have to protect the pasture for the 150 nomadic families. So it means we just have to coexist. So that's why we like to talk about coexisting. So the nature reserve protects over 40 species, mammals, and over 200 species of birds, and 7 species of reptiles. It's a home of critically important locally and internationally endangered species, and we have been studying these species for the last 20 years. And we learned that these Snares vultures with the wing tag number 17, as soon as they learn how to fly, they fly to South Korea. That we didn't know. And they just go, like they don't need passports, they don't need their parents, they just go. So for 5 to 6 years until they start breeding, they go between South Korea and Mongolia.